Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Tonight we have three panelists who are going to talk further about stopping healthcare violence. Jeannie White, who's the moderator, Sheila Wilson, and Elizabeth Dalton, both who are nurses. Good evening, ladies.
Good evening, Miss Lillian. How are you?
Oh, getting ready for the big snow to come in on Saturday night to Sunday.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, wish you were here. 4 to 8 inches.
Well, we're going to get a lot of snow here also, supposedly tomorrow and then Sunday night.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a double whammy, and then there's supposed to be a little bit of freezing rain. Absolutely. So why don't we start
introducing each other?
Introducing each other with your affiliations and what you do and why you wanted to try to get a bill passed in the Massachusetts legislature and how important it is to see it get through.
Well, I'm Jeannie White, and I'm the station manager here on Passionate World Talk Radio, and I'm also an admin for Sheila Wilson for Stop Healthcare Violence. So next.
I'm Sheila Wilson. I'm president of Stop Healthcare Violence for the past 9 years. And I welcome anybody to join us. But the reason why I started it was to increase public awareness and start to lobbying for any type of legislature to help our nurses and medical assistants, and also supporting and empowering healthcare providers. Thank you, Jeannie.
Yeah. Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Dalton, and I'm a nurse. And what I'm doing right now is I've been newly appointed to your board of directors for Stop Healthcare Violence, and I'm a victim of workplace violence. So I have a personal interest, and I have an interest to also help all the other nurses that are going through this now currently, and I foresee that it's going to increase with the violence in the workplace because the administrators are not directly dealing with this. So I'm here, and I'm asking people as well to join us to start a coalition, a grassroots opportunity to have your story heard, and also to join us in getting these bills passed. And I recommend anyone that would like to know a little bit more is to go onto the website, stophealthcareviolence.org, and find out more information of this organization.
What about you, Lillian?
My name is Lillian Caldwell, and I'm the CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio, but I also am a board member of Stop Healthcare Violence, and I try to help Sheila and Jeannie get the word out by providing them with the additional airtime that they need to get the word out as to what's going on with them, why they're trying to get this bill passed in Massachusetts, and how important it is really to try and stop the violence against healthcare workers all across the United States. Because you hear stories beginning to leak out, no matter how much the hospitals try to hush it up. I think it was last year when a nurse was apprehended by a security guard and handcuffed and forcibly removed from the hospital. And all she was doing was following hospital regulations. And she was treated rather roughly. And nobody thought twice about it. But how would you like it if you were a husband or a child or a sister or brother, and she comes home looking like somebody messed with her for a while? Would you like to know that somebody laid hands on her and forcibly cuffed her because she was following the regulations that the hospital insists that she follow, but at the same time can't do anything about it because the hospital doesn't want any type of bad publicity going out and alerting people as to what really takes place in these organizations?
I agree. What do you think, Sheila?
Well, there's so many stories out there, And one story I'd like to share is a woman that was stabbed 11 times. Now, this woman almost lost her life. She was intubated and she had a feeding tube. She was a triage nurse, and somebody was a disgruntled patient from 2 weeks ago. And he went after her, and security took a few minutes to get there. By the time he got there, she was pretty critically ill. That should never happen. We should always be protected. And we need our security guards. Liz?
Yes, I also agree with you, Sheila. I believe that the hospitals are taking away security more than putting more security in. And I found that at the hospital that I worked at, they were down 20 individuals. Either they hadn't refilled the position or they weren't hiring. And I feel that there are certain hospitals that do a better job. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that the bottom line is the money. And they're not doing enough education. There needs to be workplace violence education, not just a few minutes of the competency, which that's what we dealt with. I think that we need to have real anti-violence programs, and they need to be put into place as well.
How do you go about doing that, though?
Well, I know that the police have groups within their department who go out to the schools and other institutions, businesses, and they teach women how to protect themselves so they won't get raped or to prevent a rape. And I don't know why they couldn't have some kind of preventive program put in place, either with the security guards or even with your police or fire department, teaching healthcare workers, especially nurses, of how to protect themselves when somebody tries to attack them. Because in my mind's eye, it's pretty much the same thing. You're still being assaulted.
Yeah, you was. But aren't the nurses being trained in that when they come in?
No, the nurses don't even know that being a nurse in certain departments, or actually all of the departments, is a tough job. And at any time, you can get assaulted. However, when I was working in the emergency room, the Boston police came and they taught us how to do things. And it was quite, there wasn't that many women that showed up and very few nurses. However, I just received an email from somebody that wants to tell her story because she fought back and she got fired.
Mm-hmm. But I'm a little confused, Sheila. I thought it was said that the nurses had some way of preparing themselves should a patient come in that was incoherent or maybe in a diabetic coma. I thought you all were trained a little bit about this.
Yes, that we're trained at. I'm sorry, I was just thinking of the violence. Yeah. I was piggybacking onto what Lillian said. Yes, if somebody comes in with a low blood sugar, having a seizure, has Alzheimer's, we are prepared for that. We are not prepared for the person that leaps out at us without any knowledge on our part that this person is going to do that. Now, this person could be there like 5 times and hurt somebody each time, but nobody talks about it. Mm-hmm. You can't have a book there and say, this person, male or female, has hurt a nurse or medical assistant or anybody the last 5 times he came in to be evaluated. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But isn't there a way? I used to be a programmer, so isn't there a way that you could flag in the computer program?
Absolutely. Some hospitals have that. Other hospitals don't have the technology support or expertise to do that. In the hospital I was at, I tried for almost 3 years and they couldn't put that onto their registration charts. So when a patient came in, the first person would know that this person needed to be watched and maybe extra security or somebody around. But no, that didn't happen. But some hospitals do have that.
Mhm. What do you think, Liz?
Well, I know that we had it at one time to flag a patient, but then when we went into the new computer system of Epic, which was what we were being trained in, they took that option out. It was, we didn't have the right to do that, and the hospital didn't want the liability of that person being flagged. I don't know the whole rationale behind the whole reason why, but I would say it has anything to do with liability for the hospital. One of the things I think the hospitals are not for doing, volunteering to do anti-violence programs, the ones that they are doing, I found that they're not following them. And not everybody in the institution knew exactly what their rights were. That's the thing about knowing what your rights are. I think that, we can post that for people so that they do know their rights. I did learn that through the M&A as well. You do have the right, and as far as I'm concerned, when you're in the hospital and you feel threatened and you don't feel that your security department is handling it correctly, you have the right to call the police department. You have that right. The hospital will say that you do not have that right, but yes, you do. And I believe that people should practice it because that might get more coverage because the hospitals are made to deal with it, to have to call in that kind of help. So a lot of nurses were reprimanded for calling police, but you have the right to do it.
Do a lot of nurses know this right? Either one of you?
No, they don't. Because the hospital's administrators will reprimand nurses for calling the police. Now, that was something that I fought for. I felt that I didn't know that I could call the police. I thought it actually, in my case, the security department, they called the police because it involved a weapon. But I felt that the case, I don't want to get into the whole thing, but it wasn't handled properly because they acquiesced to the security department. So the wrong weapon was confiscated. So when you're in a situation where you become a victim of workplace violence, you have the right to call the police and press charges. Press charges.
Is it in the rules? Is it in the rules?
You,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to butt in.
no, that's okay.
Is it in the rules and regulations? I mean, is it printed somewhere
No,
that this is true?
no, it is not.
Well, OSHA,
We have,
if I can interrupt just for a minute, OSHA says we can do this.
Okay.
And that's the law. You can. The hospital I worked at, which is very different than Elizabeth's, even though we're 10 miles apart,
right.
we would call the turret. I worked in a different department as Liz, but all I had to do was pick up a phone and say, I need the police here now. And they would like fall out of the ceiling. We never had an issue with calling the police. The issue that we had was that the nurses didn't want to call the police.
Do you have any idea why the nurses do this? Do you have any idea at all?
Well,
why they would stop themselves from preventing themselves from getting hurt?
Well, no, they think part of it's part of their job. The culture has changed that way. It's like, okay, well, he only hit me a little bit. I really shouldn't cause any trouble. And depending upon how many nurses you work with and what type of people that the nurse is, I hope I said that right.
You did.
They may not think getting slapped, kicked, or punched, not too hard, is a big deal. And I know that one girl was significantly hurt. She was out of work for months and months and months. She couldn't come back. And she went somewhere else, and she had a couple of friends, and they said, oh, we just thought you were being a drama queen.
So the nurses don't support each other. That's the deal.
No.
They don't support each other. So there's
No.
no camaraderie here.
No, it's just, it has turned into part of the culture.
Well, they
And-
made it part of the culture. The nurses made it themselves.
Right.
Am I wrong in stating that?
Nope. Nope.
What do you
Yes.
think, Liz?
Well, I have my personal experience was that I was fully supported, but I felt that nurses were afraid to come forward. There's like a non-verbal type of feeling that Sheila's explaining as well, is that it's part of your job, and that this is, I didn't work in hospitals as long as Sheila did, but I can tell you the time that I was there, 20 years, is that we just took it. We just took it and we tried to deal with it as it came along. But I felt earlier in the career, we had more protection. I feel like when our hospital had gone into a patient family mode of caring for the patient with the family always present, I think that that model brought in more problems than help. I think it's great that a family be involved with the care of the patient, but you're seeing a lot of families coming in, they're intoxicated. That's a problem. They're under the influence of something, and you know it, and they become verbally abusive first, and then they become physically, assaultive. So, but I found overall with the nurses in my immediate area, they supported me, but I don't know if they would have come forward like I did, because I came forward full tilt, and I don't have a career right now. I don't know if I'm ever going to be a nurse again.
Is it possible to create a list the way the government has created a list for pedophiles? And when they keep track of these folks, if they move into a certain neighborhood, you get a warning email saying a pedophile has moved into your neighborhood, be forewarned. So couldn't they do the same thing with the people who abuse their nurses and start compiling them on a list, so that if these people go other places, that department, whether it's an emergency or admitting the patient in, can at least be forewarned that they're going to get somebody who's been prone to violence before, and to watch out?
I believe that's against patients' rights.
But what about the nurses' rights?
Well, there you go. We used to have a book many years ago of all of the people that were disrespectful, assaultive, mean, people that would, pick up things, that walk out with, like shoplifting. And all of a sudden that book had to disappear. Now, does that mean that we couldn't have a book in our locker? Probably not, but nobody had the guts to do it.
I just think that I know that patients have certain rights. Everybody has certain rights. But when your certain rights start violating somebody else's rights, that's usually when they bring in the cops or a negotiator to make sure that both sides are heard and both sides get their rights. It just doesn't seem to be fair to expect nurses to come to work and be in combat zones like a MASH unit and not be prepared or protected against the very people they're trying to help.
Well,
Correct.
Go ahead, Liz.
Correct. I mean, that's right. I would like to bring up another point too. It's not fair to the families that are there, that the sick people that are there being cared for as well. Everyone gets scared when these things happen. Imagine, yourself as a patient and witnessing this stuff. It makes you not want to go to the hospital. It makes you not want to be there by yourself. You don't feel, the nurse gets hurt. I've had patients say to me, "Oh my God, what's going on out there? What is happening?" So it affects everybody. It affects everybody in the whole place. But the nurses typically, historically, were afraid to come forward. I think we're putting the word out there. I think we're doing what we're doing right now. We're letting people know that we need to change the law. The laws have to be changed. There needs to be repercussions for this kind of action, and to be violent and verbally assaultive, using weapons. I'm sorry, but they're not allowed in a courthouse. They're not allowed. I've said it before. You're not allowed to go into a law firm in Boston without going through, a metal detector, cameras, things like that. We did have cameras in the hallway, but not in the room. I don't expect that, but I expect that some things did happen after I left. Some things did happen. They did put a camera, and you had to buzz the door, which we had that years ago, but they took it away. Stuff like that. I think sometimes we need to go back to the way it was, where there was so much more respect. There was so much more, everyone would jump in if something happened, Now it's just, it seems to be happening more frequently, and it's hard to keep track of.
Liz, I'm really happy that you mentioned the families. That was something I hadn't thought of right away, but the families of the nurses that have been assaulted are just as devastated as the nurse. One girl that Jeannie knows and I know, she got assaulted really bad. She's out of work, she's on disability, and her grandson saw her bruises, and she told him she fell. She didn't tell him the truth. And even with the fact that she said that she fell, he cried. He outlined those bruises, and it killed her to see him get so upset over the fact that even she fell. If she ever said a patient hit her, this little boy would have been so devastated. Another one is a 15-year-old girl, was with her mother all breakfast, saw her in the car when the mother was driving her to school, and was horrified. Well, this mother told her daughter that a patient hit her. And she just went into crying. And she couldn't believe that a patient would hurt her. It was her mother. And what is she doing working and having somebody assault her? She wouldn't let her husband assault her. She wouldn't let her child assault her. So some stranger that you're taking care of assaults her.
Mm-hmm. So now you have a bill. You've done the bill again, filing the bill.
Yes,
right.
doctor.
The wording is still being worked on, correct?
Yes, it's a docket.
So say this bill gets passed, all right, which we're hoping it will get passed. Don't you think that the hospital has to play a better role in what they're doing? Like, they're not in compliant. I don't care what hospital you talk about. I'm not going to mention their names, but they're all in there for the business. But don't you think it's their responsibility also to protect you? How would they like it, the president of the hospital, a patient gets through and gets up to his office and beats the crap out of him? Don't you think for a minute things are going to change?
Oh, you got that right, Miss Jean.
So think about this, folks, when we're talking about this, that the culture has to change no matter what. And the nurses have to really stand by each other. They have to. And the hospital has to take 50% of the responsibility of how the culture has changed, because their attitude was, you don't make waves. The more stars we get, that means the more Medicare patients come in there. It's all about money.
That's right.
I mean, I'm not a nurse, and I'm not sure I want to go to any of these hospitals. I'm going to try to stay home and be taken care of, which I can. But in the same token, we're running around in circles here. But you have to change. You have to get the nurses on board to protect each other. Because if you don't protect each other, I'm not kidding you. I know I talked about this before. There'll be a lot of robots running around these hospitals.
what you really need to do is try to start a movement and have all the nurses march on Capitol Hill or go down to where they pass the bills or go into the chamber of the mayor and the governor. But you need to organize them and do some kind of march in unity where they're wearing their uniforms and people recognize that these are indeed the people who spend 100% of the time taking care of you when you're in the hospital, because the doctors only show up when they go on their rounds. As one nurse told me, we take care of you. We should get what those doctors are earning because they're never around. And I really think that that's probably the best way to make them pay attention to you, is to try and get 1,000 nurses together or 500 nurses together and march down there demanding your rights for protection against being assaulted by the patients. Because if the nurses aren't there to take care of the patients, who's left? I don't want any of those orderlies, thank you very much. Because a lot of them aren't really trained to be anything but an orderly. And it's the nurses who are the backbone of the hospitals. Those are the people who take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need to show your solidarity and push back that way.
That's a good word, solidarity, because I don't see it with your nurses.
Yeah, I do feel when we fought this bill before, there was language in the bill that did make the hospital responsible. But that's when the big lobbyists came in, the hospital association, the lobbyists for Partners and Stewart and all the other corporations. Their lobbyists fought against that bill.
Well, let's get their names. Let's get the names of the lobbyists.
Well, then let's put them in situations when they go to the hospital and something happens.
Right.
And see how they handle it.
But that would never happen, Lillian.
Oh, I know it's not ever going to happen. Maybe I need to write a play about it.
So how do you get the names of the lobbyists?
Because the thing of the matter is there are people involved, and they're mostly women who are nurses.
There you go.
Men.
Well, you can get a list of the lobbyists. It's just that you don't know what happens behind closed doors. Okay, that's all private. That's been like
so that. I bet you 99% of, don't get me wrong now, 99% are men.
They're all men.
Lobbyists.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Ladies, we need to wrap it up.
Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. You want to give any final words, Sheila?
Well, I would like to say this. I just listened to something last night, and I just want to say this, that the expectations that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to walk through water without getting wet. And Rachel Riemann wrote this. And the whole time I'm thinking of all the times that we have been assaulted and we're supposed to just accept it. It's not right.
No.
It really
fair.
isn't.
Or at least get combat pay for what you're doing.
Right. Liz, what are your final words?
I just had a question. Is this going to be on Facebook Live?
Yes.
Yes.
It will be posted on Binge Network. It will be posted on Cool Your Heels with Lillian. Be seen next Tuesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. It will be posted on all of social media.
All right, great. I do have a final thought.
Okay.
You know what? We need to stick together. Okay, we're going to stick together. We will be a coalition of nurses and healthcare providers, and I expect everybody, and I will invite everybody, everyone that's involved in the health profession, to come forward and help us fight these bills, and just be present. Just call your legislators. You can go on mass.gov. You can find out who your representative is, and you can call them and tell them that you support the docket number 3466 And then when the bill comes up, we will ask for support and for people to go with us.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks a lot, Liz. I really appreciate it. If anyone, how do they get in touch with both of us?
They can get in touch with me with my email, Sheila, SHEILA, W6 at Comcast.net, or info@stophealthcareviolence.net.
Liz?
.org.
Yeah, just a shout out quick. I want everyone that's listening to go onto the website and check out the information there. It's very informative, and there's a lot of advocacy that's going on with this organization, StopHealthCareViolence.org. My contact information is elizabeth.dalton.rnbsn, and my last name is DALTON. And I hope somebody writes to me. I hope they do, because every voice counts, every single voice. And I want nurses to come forward. If they need help with something that's happened to them, I can help them, and I would be there for them. They just need to reach out.
Mm-hmm. Well,
or they can contact the station at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com, or they can call 484-364-1032, or they can contact Jeannie at
the Connect Show at gmail.com.
Great. And before we go away and stray, Voltaire had this to say in 1740: if the first law of friendship is that it has to be cultivated, the second law is to be indulgent when the first law has been neglected. Thank you all very much for joining us this evening. And remember, write and let us know, nurses, what you want to do.
Yes,
Thank you.
be involved.
And have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that a wrap?
Wait.